Hello everyone, the Skilled Roy here, back with another Legends of Runeterra video, and today we have finally the final expansions sort of reveal trailer came out, as well as a bunch of cards. So we're gonna go ahead and hop right into the cards and sort of see which of these seems promising and which of them are kind of bad. Now, of course, during the trailer, we also got to see Yuumi and Gnar, which confirms 2 out of the 4 champions that I had theorized, which is great. But we are still waiting on the Demacian champion and the Freljordian champion. So those 2 champions are really going to sort of have to seal the deal for us. Unfortunately, it's a little too hard to say for sure at this point. My current bets were Galio and Udyr, but honestly, there's very little evidence for either of them, so it's honestly anyone's game at this point. Let me know in the comments below which one you think it is. But otherwise, though, we're heading right into the cards. Let's take a look. So first up, we have Hothead, the 3-mana Yordle for 2 in Shurima and Bandle City. Hothead is attack, grant the top champion in your deck +1/+1, and a random keyword. Now, this is an interesting card, mostly just because I'm curious as to where it was meant to go. It's totally a fine card in most situations. Like, you play it, you attack, you get the value, probably trade up, hopefully, in most situations. But with 2 health, I have to wonder, and no keyword to really activate this card efficiently, it's going to be really hard to make this card really work. I'm not sure if I really like this card very much. Off the top of my head, I'm going to say that the card is fairly bad. Like, I don't see myself running this too often. It's going to be a really great hit off of the cards that are going to either make Yordles or make multi-region cards. That's where it's going to shine the most. But running this in your main deck definitely does feel a little bad, mostly because it can be answered so easily by a wide variety of cards, and that the upside of getting +1/+1 and a random keyword, that's so hard to like realistically hit without getting like a crazy high roll. Like, I don't know, Hothead does seem a little weak to me. I'm not really a huge fan of Hothead, unfortunately. Alright, next up is Transposition, the 4-mana Bandle City spell with fast recall an ally. The next ally you play this round with equal or less costs 0 instead. Now, this card is very spicy. You can think of it almost as a sort of 4-mana deny with an upside, because if they try to target your unit, you can bounce it back to your hand, replay it, and get any more bonus like summon or play effects. That's awesome already. I think the most powerful way that this card is going to be used, however, is going to be Ice Pillar with Trundle, because with this card, you'll be able to bring it back to your hand, play it again, get another 8 cost for Lysandra, for example, and then be able to play your Watcher sooner because your mana will be getting reset by Transposition playing the Ice Pillar again. Honestly, it's actually pretty interesting. I think the card is actually quite good. I could see this definitely seeing some level of play. It is probably going to be overrated by most people, I will say, but I think overall it might have some really solid combo potential and it's worth testing out. I'm not sure how good that's going to be compared to, say, like SI or Ionia variants of the deck, but I think that Transposition is definitely up there for making the Bandle City version more possible. So next up we have Heroic Refrain, the 3-mana, give 2 allies +2/+1 this round. This is an interesting card, to say the least. I'm not too sure if this is good enough. We have, I think, Together We Stand or something like that in Targon, which is +1/+2, and that's in a faded region that wants the multi-target. And this feels like it's kind of just that, but more offensive instead of defensive. But the issue is, I think that you prefer higher health totals if you're trying to invest into units. So I'm really not sure if this is that good, especially if you're trying to use this aggressively. There's better versions of this card out there, like Brothers Bond, which is just 1 less mana for permanent +2 attack. Man, it's really hard to see this card being particularly strong. I think it's okay. It's just probably a little weaker than I kind of imagined it would be. And as a combat trick, it's fine. It's just, it's hard to say this card's gonna be really good at all. It feels weaker inherently to me. We would need to see what the Bandle City faded cards are gonna be like, and if they tie in with Pantheon well. Next up we got is Fey Aid. It is a 3-mana, a burst speed spell, create a Hungry Owl Cat in hand, and then grant Fey allies in hand +1/+1. Now, this is not too bad in all honesty. It really depends on how many you hit. Creating an Owl Cat is worth maybe 1.5 mana at most. So like, if you think about that, you're +1/+1 to your entire hand. That is only Fey allies, so it's kind of like Sown Seeds in a weird way. It's, man, I'm not in love with this card. It seems fine. It really is going to depend on how strong the Fey archetype is going to be, and I think inherently we're going to have to wait for Yuumi for that. So I don't want to say if this is going to be too good or too bad just yet, but I think Yuumi will definitely need to make some things happen to make this card exciting. We'll have to see what it looks like in the future. Alright, next up is Gleaming Lantern, the 3-mana 3/3. Each round, the first Fey you play costs 2 less. Now, this card is terrifying. This card seems insane. This card is Very, very scary to me. I don't even I don't even know what to say. Like, so obviously 3 mana 3/3 is pretty normal stats. You usually get a pretty decent ability on top of that, but the ability to then therefore continuously activate additional phase consistently is going to be very, very scary. Like, especially if you get like multiple Gleaming Lanterns, then if they do stack, I am terrified of what you can start doing with this. Like, even Gleaming Lantern on turn 3 into a Gleaming Lantern on turn 4 with it like another 3 mana to work with, that's pretty good. Like, you're gonna be able to make some really crazy things happen. Like, Gleaming Lantern is very, very interesting. We're gonna have to see exactly what more Fae targets you have. It looks like most Faes are 2 mana, which means you're essentially getting a free Fae play, which is really good. So we're gonna have to see just like where you want to go with this, but this is inherently, at least from first glance, pretty spooky. Like, this could get somewhere really, really quickly. Overall, really, really strong card. All right, one of the new Faes is a 2 mana 2/2 Ionia and Bandle City. Blast Cone Seedling. Play, give me barrier this round, or grant me impact. This is actually really decent. So a 2 mana 2/2 with impact is obviously slightly below curve, as we know from stone stackers. But on top of that though, you're the ability to play barrier instead and have a really solid early game blocker that can trade into the opponent's aggressive board. That's pretty solid too. So this is actually a card that seemed really decent as soon as you start looking at it from a like versatility standpoint, which is exactly what Ionia sort of choose cards are meant to do in the first place. So overall, not a bad card, but with all the other Fae buffs around it, I have to wonder, is this going to be pretty decent? As a 2 mana 2/2 that can be played for free off Gleaming Lantern and get a huge amount of stats very quickly thanks to Fae aid, as well as the Sprouts, as well as the Grandfather Fae, which we're going to get to a little bit later. It's honestly not too bad. Card's not too bad at all. I think it could get somewhere. It's nothing special just yet, but I think it's not bad. It's not bad. The versatility is nice. All right, next up is Spirit Portal, the 4 mana focus speed spell. To play, discard 1, and then grant all allies +1/+1. So obviously this card is very much meant for the current Fizz Lulu deck, where it's all about sort of summoning more units out from your hand, and then just going wide on the board and absolutely running them over with Flame Chompers and stuff like that. Honestly, it's not a bad idea, but for 4 mana, you are having to put a lot into this. Granting all allies +1/+1 is decent, but it's not like you're really hurting on stat buffs already. It's tough. I'm not too sure if this card is really gonna make it. Maybe it could see like maybe 1 or 2 in the deck. I don't see myself running that much more than that. Overall, it's not bad, but it's just not something I'm super excited to be running. For 4 mana, you are giving up a lot as well as some unit mana, so it's a little difficult to really make it sort of pop out for me. Not bad though, not bad. If it was burst speed, I think this card would be broken, but at focus, I think it's probably fine. Now, if we're talking cards that are going to go into Fizz Lulu, Yordle Portal seems exactly right up that alley. First of all, it discards 1, letting you activate your discard effects, but on top of that, it allows you to manifest a Yordle that costs 3 or less and immediately summon it. That seems actually pretty decent. Where I think this card is especially going to be good, though, is especially going to be inside of Bandle Tree, where most Yordles are tending to be dual region already, right? So you're able to sort of look for the type of region you need, but you're able to discard sort of dead cards in your hand, or cards you don't really need to use anymore. In Bandle Tree, often you have a pretty sizable hand just because of how many different ways the deck has to make more units, and sometimes you'll get like, hey, I got 2 of this same region, I don't need this one instead, I need this one over here. So you can discard that one and then look for a region you do need. Overall, Yordle Portal gives you a lot more consistency, ironically, despite it being a random card, and I think that might actually push Bandle Tree a bit further now. It's kind of spicy, honestly. Let's definitely take a look at this card in the future. Next up is Fae Sprout, the 1 mana burst speed spell, manifest a Fae and grant it +1/+1. Now this card is almost objectively, I think, the strongest one out of the bunch, or at least the most potentially strong one. Out of all the cards that we saw here, Fae Sprout allows you to get the Tasty Fae Folk, which will then become a 5/3 lifesteal unit, and you can get it within Bandle City and not Ionia, which is extremely powerful. This means that hypothetically, any region that's splashing Bandle City will be able to get a 5/3 lifesteal unit whenever they need to. Now, thankfully though, they also introduced a bunch of other Fae units into the game with these cards, so you won't always have it as a choice, but this is at least a pretty decent card at almost all stages of the game. 1 mana for +1/+1 is really good, especially if their keyword scales really well with stats, like Lifesteal does. Honestly, there's quite a few decent targets for this, but Tasty Fae Folk is definitely going to be the one that really tilts you when someone hits it. Overall, really solid card. I expected to see a decent amount of play, especially also even in Bandle Tree, where I think it'll be really good to sort of have a defensive unit like a Tasty Fae Folk to help gain a bunch of health, as well as hit their Ionia cards that they need to hit. Overall, really cool card. All right, last up is the Grandfather Fae, the 2-mana 1/2. When I'm summoned, create a Hungry Owl Cat in hand. When you summon another Fae, grant it +1/+0. Thank God this does not immediately give more health like the Explorer was originally. For those who don't remember, Explorer tore up the meta for the short amount of time it was unnerfed, and this type of card is just very scary. As soon as you give the Swarm archetype an easy way to sort of go wide, it can get really out of hand really quickly, so I'm glad they didn't make the mistake here. That being said, it is a 2-mana 1/2 that immediately has to be answered for the threat of making other Faes strong, as well as itself making another Hungry Owl Cat in hand. So overall, not bad. I think this card is actually pretty good, especially when you start factoring in things like the other buffs, as well as Gleaming Lantern. Like the Fae is like really close to being a real archetype here, so it really depends on like what Yuumi brings to the table, because presumably Yuumi will be a Fae, and then therefore have some more cards around it. What's most interesting though about the sort of Fae archetype here though is that Yuumi is most likely going to be a Targon card, because we already got a Bandle City to Ionia champion. So it's interesting that the Fae here for Ionia are also going to be like Ionia instead of like Targon, for example. So we'll have to see what their plan is, but overall, an interesting sort of selection of cards here. I'm curious if Fae can get there. If Fae can get there, like, it's so close. If it has like maybe 1 or 2, maybe 3 more cards, like, it can get really crazy. Mostly because Lantern's really spooking me, if I'm being quite honest. That's it for today. Thank you so much everyone for watching. Hopefully tomorrow we'll have even some more cards to review as well. We are looking for the Freljord champion and the Demacian champion still, but we now know that Yuumi and Gnar were completely correct from a prediction, so I'm feeling pretty good about that. We'll hopefully see Udyr or Galio over the week to come. But if you want a place to come hang out and sort of discuss the new cards, please come check out my Discord. I have a link in the description below. You can go there, join up. We all hang out there, talk about all sorts of new cards and all that sort of good stuff. But otherwise, though, I will see you all next time. Thank you so much for watching. Peace out.